Hey, welcome to the webinar Using Vuforia Studio Augmented Reality to Meet Business Needs. This webinar will be roughly 45 minutes. I'll give people another minute here to join, but I know it's people's lunch hour, so we won't wait too long. So this webinar will focus on Vuforia Studio and the business needs that it solves. This is the third in a series of augmented reality webinars that we've done this year. So if you're interested in the other two, which both focused more on Vuforia Expert Capture for work instructions for both service and manufacturing, those can be found on PDSVISION's website under webinars. You should be able to find it in the knowledge section there. You can also reach out to me directly. My email address is on the screen here, and I can share those with you as well. I'd be happy to talk about your specific use case as well. So in the last year or so, PTC's put a lot of emphasis on Vuforia Expert Capture, and so that's the other main PTC AR product, AR being augmented reality. And they're doing a lot of really cool stuff with that technology, and the technology is really growing and they're adding features. But I wanted to take a moment and emphasize really cool and impactful stuff we can do with Vuforia Studio. And one huge advantage that may resonate with some of you is Vuforia Studio can be installed on-prem. And so that's useful for customers that have ITAR requirements or other security needs that a SaaS platform does not meet. And then you're all on mute, but if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I'll address them at the end. But with that, I'll get into it. So if you're, I'm going to just build this out. If you are a frequent flyer of these AR webinars, you might have seen probably most of this slide up before. I promise that the rest of the presentation is different, but I always want to start with the pain points because while augmented reality, I think, has the potential to be really cool and fun to see and fun to look at, it's important to make sure that we focus on what business need are we actually solving. And so I want to always make sure we're addressing pain points as they come up and not just doing something cool because it's a cool thing. And a couple things just to note here that are maybe different from previous webinars. Vuforia Studio has the additional capabilities of not just augmented reality, but also the ability to incorporate IoT, so Internet of Things, sensor data, any history, any former results, notes that the previous worker left for you. All of that can be incorporated into your AR work instructions. But yeah, so just kind of a reminder, these are the overarching pain points that we're facing. Not an exhaustive list, but a pretty good list by itself. And as we're going through, we will I'll hit on kind of the specific pain points each use case will try and solve. So going into a little more detail about some of these pain points. So for most of manufacturing, most of the history of manufacturing, at least in the US, you've had a guy named Jim or something who worked in the back of the factory for 40 years, who could tell you anything that's wrong in that factory. He'd be responsible for training up new hires and troubleshoot any problem that came up. That guy, that role is retiring in the next 5 years, and there's no one replacing him. There's not somebody who's worked there for 40 years that's going to step up. Workers don't do that anymore. They don't stay in the same job typically for 40 years for their entire career. They work in one place for 2 to 5 years and then move. So you don't have a decade to get someone up to speed. You have a couple months, and after that, they're starting to look for the door. So that's sort of one overarching void we need to fill. Paper instructions have been used forever, are hard to follow a lot of times. People don't want to make a mistake that cost the company $1 million. They don't want to have to ask 1,000 questions every day to somebody who thinks they're not able to get up to speed. They want to feel like they have the correct information to do their job and the right tools to do it. Safety compliance is always a big issue. That's a lot of times why we're brought in, is because there's a safety issue. With instructions like this, I know if I'm building something and I'm using paper instructions, I skip over the safety information. That happens all the time. It leads to dangerous situations where people are not aware of safety issues. They're not seeing make sure you do X, Y, Z before you go to step 3. And so that's very important to make sure that that's unavoidable in their face. Their eyes can't just glaze over as they go into the safety information to get onto what do I do next. And the last 3 bullet points here are all connected. So a lot of times they'll go to factories and they'll be following along with work instructions, and in the meantime they have a binder or a piece of paper where they're logging information, maybe logging the torque value and then logging what time a paste was applied, things like that. And that's very disconnected from the work itself. A lot of times that information just gets put in a folder somewhere, and if you need it for an audit, it gets pulled out. If the worker's going in there saying, hey, on step 3, these instructions are wrong, or it'd really be helpful if we had X, X, Y, Z, that information does not get passed along to the worker doing this the next day or the day after that. That information gets put in a folder and never discussed. In addition to that, connected to that is the IoT data is not accessible and the CAD data is not accessible. Going to CAD first, a lot of companies have great CAD for all the products they design, but those are only used in the engineering department. The end user is using, at best a 2D drawing of that CAD model. They're not actually able to benefit from these great CAD models that companies have spent years and millions building. They are instead using some other source of information to follow along. Then the IoT data not being accessible. You can't look at a machine and know when was this last maintained, when was this last the band changed, is there pressure behind that valve? All that information is somewhere, but it's not accessible to the frontline worker. And so part of the benefits of Vuforia Studio is being able to incorporate all these separate sources of data, the CAD data, the actual text of the work instructions, the logging, any notes the person left before you, IoT data and the CAD data all in the same system to guide the user how to do their job. Go back one here. So part of also with augmented reality work instructions is standardizing how long it takes to get someone onboarded, and standardizing how long it takes to do the work. And so I think with automation, we've gotten very used to things can be the same every time. People don't work that way generally, without some prodding. And so part of AR is to be able to say, yeah, you're gonna have some rock stars who can always do it quickly. But some people, maybe it's just they were trained on a Tuesday, and the guy who comes in on Tuesday and does training, does onboarding, isn't as good as the one on Monday, or they're working on the night shift isn't as good as the day shift. And so all of that, and they're following a different process. So all of that results in unstandard onboarding, unstandard time to completion, and unstandard processes. I know a lot of manufacturing says, yeah, most of our problems happen at night, or when the night shift happens, or on this day when we have kind of the B team in. And so the goal is to make sure everyone's following the same process and not just what they were taught on a Tuesday. And so sort of rounding out the intro here, this is something I'll expand on, but augmented reality is about delivering the right information in the right context at the right time. And so if they need a safety something before they go to step 2, that safety thing should pop up in their face and they should have to acknowledge it. And then just looking at the comparison here of this 2D drawing of a CAD model, looking at that, you could get on the wrong side. You could have something turned around the wrong way, facing the wrong direction, versus the iPad on the right. being able to walk up and actually put your hand where you're about to install it and say, yes, it goes there. Makes it hugely impactful, and really it's hard to measure, but the confidence it adds to new hires, people trying to do their job, not feeling like they need to ask questions all the time, and not feeling like they're saying, I have to double and triple check that. Now they can place the bracket confidently without needing to worry about making a mistake. So one key advantage about that Vuforia Studio offers over Expert Capture, and I'm going to be talking about the advantages of Vuforia Studio in this webinar. Just as a counter to my last two webinars being about the advantages of Expert Capture. I think they're both great products, and I want to just highlight the use cases of Vuforia Studio where that shines for this webinar. But one key advantage that Vuforia Studio offers over Expert Capture is the multimodal ways to lock onto targets, ways to place your content in 3D space. So you can do it on, well, let me just make the comparison direct. For Expert Capture, you need to be in front of the physical object in order to augment it. So you need the object in front of you. With Vuforia Studio, you can do that. You can augment on the object itself, but you can also place it just on any horizontal surface, any plane, on a table, on a floor. You can also scan a room and do an area target, and then use that as well. So the ability to use it in different scenarios without needing to have the machine in front of you at the time. So the rest of this webinar is going to be mostly show and tell, going through different use cases that I found valuable. It's going to go roughly in the order of kind of lower to higher value, as I've seen it in general, and then we're going to end with two case studies of customers and how they've had success with Vuforia Studio. So the sort of lowest hanging fruit with Studio is needing to put CAD on a table, is kind of how I describe it. I need to show an engine in a conference room. And let me pause this one for a second so we can talk about this left-hand side. Needing to show, in this example, an engine on a conference table. This is useful for design reviews, anything where it just makes sense to have the CAD in the room with you, so to speak, so you can talk about it. So this is good for product reviews, design reviews, discussing with customers, this is what your product will look like. So this is the sort of base level. You can knock this out in 5 minutes of publish the CAD, make an AR experience, throw it on the table. The sort of next level up would be incorporating, if you use Creo Parametric, your complex CAD mechanisms. And so you can show really complicated CAD and how it's moving. You can also show really simple CAD animations of a door opening or a lever being thrown open. And so, but you have the option to show these complex CAD animations in 3D space. I think that always helps to make things more clear and make you understand it better. Building off of that would be a sales and marketing use case. And so I'll show a couple examples of this. But in this case, this customer wanted to show their product, and then be able to talk about it and show key sales features. So a lot of this isn't even really AR. It's turning a PowerPoint or a pamphlet into an AR experience. So still fairly low-hanging fruit of, I want to show the CAD, but I also want to show information about it. And so that's, I think, useful to make it more interesting than you're more likely at a conference to be able to show this to someone than say, hey, let me open up a PowerPoint real quick and show this to you. So here they're able to show how the product would open in this case, what its storage capacity is, how it can contain these different boxes, these different content, and just able to go through and show the product. So expanding on that again, Um, you could also use this as a sales configurator. And so in this case, it's again a spatial target, so just placing it on a table on the floor, but the user can show uh, different configurations of a single product, of saying, okay, you could get with these options, and this is what it looks like. And if you get the next options, this is what it looks like. You could potentially change colors and change wheels, etc., for how things actually work. So instead of needing to bring to, again, I'll say a conference to instead of needing to bring 5 different machines, 5 different vehicles, you can just bring one AR experience and show it off. And I was saying that this is a spatial target, so just placed on the table. But the same thing could happen with a model target. So you could bring, I've seen one company bring just the front wheel of an airplane, and they lock onto that, and then based on that, they show different airplane configurations beyond that. And so you can augment on top and show, hey, this pickup truck could have a cover on the bed, or it could have seats in the back, etc. So you can use this as a sales configurator to show customers different options. And so this is an example of locking onto the actual model itself. Similar to that first example with the flying ship company, you can use this to highlight key parts, key features you want to talk about. In this case, it's also showing a couple of warnings, but here's, some key features you want to address. The user can tap on them and learn about them. Again, this is a sales and marketing use case. Um, and then this end is sort of a service use case of showing how this part can be replaced. That could be part of the sales and marketing of our rear wheels are very easy to replace. Let us show you. So if that's part of your sort of sales pitch, you can include that and have it be sort of both sales and services in there. So as we go through, I think I will have multiple examples that sort of cover different use cases. And so just to see that you can use most of the same AR experience for service as well as sales as well as manufacturing. So going through, that was for sales. Next use case I want to talk about is theory of operations and machine familiarization. Also include part ID, being able to tap on a part and learn about it. And I'll let this play, but this is really useful for onboarding new hires. Maybe you have this really expensive capital equipment that needs constant uptime, so you're not able to safely train somebody who doesn't know how to operate it. You're maybe not able to have them touch it at all until they're trained on it. And so you have this issue where you need to have downtime to train them on it, but you can't risk that. Can't risk them breaking it, not knowing how to use it yet. So this is a really good way to get around that. Is they can practice with, they can see how the machine operates, see potential danger zones. In this case, we're seeing an X-ray view into the machine to see how it actually operates. And so this way they get a couple passes of, yes, I've done this before with AR. Now I feel confident enough to do it on the actual machine itself and not risk breaking this $1 million machine on my first day. And so that's also useful if someone's going to be coming on site next week and you don't want to waste time getting somebody up and running. They're being cross-trained on this machine. You want them to have a chance to train remotely before they come on site. This is a great use case for that as well. And here at the end of this, we're also just learning different axes. So this is basically turning a couple 100-page PDF into an AR experience to learn about how this machine works and what the different axes are. I'll also call out here, we've so far been looking at AR experiences through the eyes of an iPad or a phone. Here is through the eyes of a Microsoft HoloLens. So just to see another view, this would be hands-free. And this is an inspection checklist use case. So for a maintenance procedure, you have to make sure certain tasks are done before you can safely perform maintenance on this helicopter in this case. And so this is guiding the user through each step, making sure things are disarmed, things are locked, etc. Lockout, tag out type procedure. And this use case is sort of a foot in the door of work instructions, which is what we'll get to in a moment here, which I think is probably one of the more impactful and really high value use cases of augmented work instructions. So this is having the user walk through this just inspection procedure. And I don't think this use case has any big warning signs of saying before you touch this, do X. But you could have those if those were required. And just kind of walking through the UI of the HoloLens. And so this is that same use case. Maybe I'll play the right hand one first. This is through an iPad, but it's actually locking onto the physical helicopter and guiding the user through that way. So it's augmenting onto the helicopter itself as opposed to a spatial target just on the floor. And so you can see how this really takes the guessing game out of where should something be installed. You can see it installed right in front of you. So similar to the brackets we were seeing earlier, and then we'll see again in a moment. This really takes the guessing game out of how do I do this. And so here are some warnings they have to acknowledge before they get into it. So like I was mentioning, if you needed to make sure they acknowledged it first, you can have that pop up. And this is that same thing, but on a scale model. So that brings us to work instructions, which, like I said, is what I consider the highest value use case. Same business needs as the checklist. I'll let this play as I'm talking here. Same business needs as the checklist of I need a way to convey these instructions to my users in a way that's not confusing, that they enjoy doing, and that shows all the information they need at the right time. So this would be an assembly process from scratch. You could have this playing next to where you're building your 3D printer and have it go through and show them how to assemble it. And this is where the benefit of having multimodal targets really comes in effect. So you're able to use a spatial target, so place the CAD on the floor, versus a model target based on your situation. So have the CAD on the floor or locked onto the physical model. That really is beneficial in scenarios where you're assembling from scratch because the model's changing every step. You're going from just a base to now a base and these vertical struts, and now base vertical struts and the center axes. So every step the model's changing, so a model target wouldn't work for this use case. So this where the spatial target really comes into play and is really beneficial. Once the model is built, the actual product is built, that's where it comes in. The model target really shines. And so you can show, in this case, it's some IoT information first, and then see part ID. You're able to see each individual subpart and know specific information about it. Maybe was it manufactured at that site, or is it a purchased part? Who to go to about design changes, etc. All that information could be accessible to the end user just by tapping on the part. So they don't have to go and look up their big book of 3D printers. They can just tap on the part. And so here it's augmenting on how do I disassemble this this extruder, this nozzle head, and going through and having it actually be augmented on the part. So again, same product, but you have the option of spatial targets, area targets, model targets, depending on what makes the most sense for that use case. So that's where it's, I think, hugely powerful to be able to do that without needing to switch products. And so this is a similar thing, I think very similar to the 3D printer assembly, but this is using a HoloLens just to show sort of the same thing, but with the HoloLens guiding them through the work instructions. But again, really powerful being able to show the model in space as opposed to needing it to be finished to actually start augmenting. This is a little bit of a change of pace here, but I wanted to cover this as well. As you're going through, as users are going through, they might make a ton of experiences and need a way to sort it, to use it, to find the right one. Maybe to know, am I using the spatial target or the model target? Is it going to be work instructions or part ID or IoT information or a sales configuration? And so one, I think, little heralded thing about Vuforia Studio is it allows you to make these web pages that you can store all of your AR experiences there in let's say ThingWorks, filter them and access them there. You can dynamically load models, so you can make sure you're getting the most recent and up-to-date model from whatever system you have, and then you're able to have the user just filter through, maybe search by work order, by part number, and get the correct experience that way. And so this can all be custom made as however you need it, however it makes sense for your users. But I think that's a really not talked about feature is the ability to make these custom web pages, custom landing pages for all your AR experiences. And I should add, these are all linking, or in this example, it's linking to a Vuforia Studio experience. But if you have a mixture of Vuforia Studio experiences and expert capture procedures, you can link them all in the same Vuforia Studio webpage, and on maybe your quality use case, it links to an expert capture procedure, and on your assembly use case, it links to a Vuforia Studio procedure. Those can all be combined into one really efficient landing page that makes it sort of a very cohesive end user experience. So next, we're getting now into the IoT overlay side of things. So this is another feature that Vuforia Studio really excels in that expert capture can't do, which at this point, I think that might change in the future, but the being able to connect to and display IoT information is a really big strength of Vuforia Studio. And unfortunately, this is just a mock-up. I wasn't able to get clearance to share the customer data, but we were at a customer the other week and they wanted to see their IoT information overlaid as you walked into their factory. And so above each machine has IoT data of machine health, when the last time it was maintained, is it currently running? Because their machines were such that you couldn't tell if it was running or not actively, and then what process is currently running in that. And so I think that's a useful use case for just at a glance seeing that information, especially if that IoT information is all in a manager's office somewhere at the end of a football field away from where the machines actually are. Being able to walk by the machine and know what's the operation, when was the last time it was maintained, what's the current uptime on that, whatever information is relevant to you to do your job, that information can be there in the AR experience. And so an example of that in action would be this, where it's gonna see have labels on different things, potentially IoT data saying it's, in this case, okay, or letting you know if it's on or anything like that. So IoT data coming through, and then I'll let it get to the next one here in a moment. And so here the user is just kind of looking around and seeing different information about the parts they're looking at, the machines they're looking at. So we're getting a plant health overview. And then this is what I wanted to show of things like direction of flow, temperature of the water. Is it hot or cold water? Is it oil or gas type things? Is that refrigerant or accelerant coming through this? And so that's that they had an issue where they needed to know, is there pressure behind that valve? And they had it all IoT'd up, but the actual display of the IoT data was in the room. So the user would have to be all prepared to do this maintenance procedure and then leave the room and go check that to confirm and then come back. And so not having to do that, having it all be in one spot was useful to them. And this will help where I had to just follow lines down to see where it spits out. And if you can just have that overlaid on top of it, you can that'd be much quicker. You don't have to lift roof panels to see inside or ceiling panels to see inside. And then just to show some sort of real-time IoT information and how it can go both ways. This is just a kind of a dummy experience I whipped up. This is a Raspberry Pi, and from the AR experience, you can change what colors display on the Raspberry Pi. So it's a two-way connection. You can change what the LEDs say. Here we're getting temperature data and acceleration and humidity. You can see the orientation changes, and it all comes through there. And so this obviously is kind of a dummy use case, but I think the point is valid and remains that you can have a two-way connection of connecting your IoT connected devices to AR and then write to them as well. So both read and write connection. Some sort of real life use cases for that would be top left, getting sensor information, getting all the sensor data, the last, maybe oil pressure, the last time it was changed, last maintenance procedure done there. On the bottom, this user's using a smart connected torque gun. And when they torque a bolt correctly, it highlights it in the CAD model. It's kind of small, but he's being guided to each location. And when he hovers over the right connection, it turns from a light cyan to a yellow. And the whole time his progress is being updated there. And so the business need here was these bolts don't have really a visual indicator if they're torqued or not. And so it's tough to know if you torqued it correctly and you don't want to over torque it. And so people were having trouble keeping track of I did all these bolts in the right order. Here it can guide the user, this is the next bolt to torque, and it'll let you know when you've done it. And then top right corner is just IoT information of temperature. The extruder hot end is 198 degrees and the bed is 70 degrees. Having that information at a glance can be useful. So just the incorporation of IoT making your work instructions smart work instructions. So whether it's safety related of don't touch that, it's hot, or maintenance related of someone changed the band yesterday, that's useful for the end users to have as they're about to do their job. So I have two examples of navigation, but this is using this is an example of a spatial target, or sorry, of an area target to guide the user and to locate the augmentations. So this is just a walk around my office here, and don't have the CAD model obviously for my office, my apartment, but using just a LiDAR scan with an iPad, I was able to scan it, use it, and then mock up a quick navigation example. So here it locks on right away when I'm in that space. And now it's guiding me to, go through this door, and there's a coffee maker that's augmented on my desk. So incorporating CAD I do have into a room that I don't have the CAD of. Here it's telling me don't go through this door, that's why it's red. And it's guiding me to the next location. So I think maybe just to go back 1 second, here it's guiding me to the first location through this first door, and once I get there, it then guides me to the next location. So waypoint 1 is there. When I go through the green door, once I've reached waypoint 1, then it changes to waypoint 2. And so now it guides me to the next location. And so here's another piece of CAD augmented here in the landing. We can add 3D images, some 3D work instructions there as well. And so maybe a little more cleaned up version of that, a little more professional, salesy version. PTC released this. This is their headquarters, their CXC in Boston. So here it's guiding the user, same way that I was just showing, through their corporate experience center. And so potentially grabbing IoT information of what room currently has a meeting scheduled. I don't know if, this example is not a huge high value use case of knowing if there's a meeting scheduled or not. But the concept, I think, works for this, whereas it's guiding the user to the right location to perform a task and having relevant IoT information available along the way. So another example here is planning future layouts. And so here, this is a factory where they wanted to be able to show a customer, if you sign this contract, we will build this factory. We have it already planned out. This is where your machines will go. And so they want to be able to show that, yes, we're serious about this, and here it is, and this is, we already know the kind of optimized layout here. And they're able to see it in 3D space in front of them, and potentially see the products moving. I think in this case, there's no animation, but you could have this robot rotating and moving and have the assembly line working, so you could actually visualize what it would look like in this factory in the place. In this case, it's sort of a dollhouse version of different layout options. And so here you're seeing that's kind of a long way to go from step one to step two. Maybe you want to optimize it to a different method without having to go all the way across. Now it goes from 1 to 2 to 3, seeing different layout as options. And so here you can see, yes, some CAD animations involved as well. So this is, like I said, a desktop, just tabletop version, but this could be done the same way that the previous video was done, at scale in the environment if you wanted to. But again, just the power of multimodal targets, being able to do it at scale in the real environment, or at 1/10 scale at the table to be able to talk about it in a business meeting. Just really powerful and flexible. This is a use case that I didn't know was needed until sort of customers brought it to me. But chalking up parts, doing mock-ups on parts before you drill a hole or before you paint it, is really time-consuming, and it's manual, and there's not an easy way to automate that. And so I've seen two different customers use this. One on the top, chalking up a vehicle for paint marks. In the past, they had to take measuring tape and compare it to their design document and say, okay, this dotted line or this squiggly line starts 6 inches away from this corner, okay, and then it connects 12 inches away from this other part, this bolt, and they'd have to just use measuring tape and dots and then kind of connect it that way. And so there was a lot of mistakes made and really time consuming. And then with AR, they're able to just augment the squiggly lines and then just trace them with the chalk, write those in chalk, and then send it to the paint shop and have them paint, black in this side and brown on the other side and green on the other side. So that was really a use case I wasn't aware of. That was really interesting to see. So that it sped up manual process a lot. And then on the right, I'm actually going to go into the first use case we're going to talk about here, or the first case study rather we're going to talk about. But this is a part that needs to be welded, and the use case is chalking up to train a robot, a welding robot, where to do different weld marks. And again, that was really manual, time-consuming process, and being able to augment it with AR instead of having to measure it with a tape measure saved them a ton of time. And so, kind of getting into that, they used Vuforia Studio to augment that. And so, like I mentioned, the current method was tape measure and consult a 2D drawing, do the chalk mark, go to the next one, and do that thousands of times for every operation, every line changeover. Here, this is a one line, they were able to save 300 hours of work over a week or a weekend, um, saving them $250,000 just on that one line changeover. And so they were able to use AR to know where to mark the chalk, and then use that to train their robots on where to weld. And so just with that sort of simple, not a very complex AR procedure, there were no animations, they didn't use any IoT, but just be able to show different points on a CAD model, was able to make this work. So the last, I guess, case study I want to mention is customer Horizon. They were having trouble with work instructions being difficult to follow. They were either 2D drawings or 2D kind of computer graphics on a computer, and so they were having trouble with the translation from the work instructions to the 3D space in front of them. And they were also, they hit on multiple of the other issues we mentioned of their logging was disconnected to the work instructions. If someone noticed an error on Monday, it was not updated on Tuesday. There was no way to track that into the work instructions as they went forward. And they were logging it, but it was going just to a paper system that was separate and really only used for auditing. And so here's on the left, it was the old version they're using, which was just on a computer, showing them where things were installed. And on the right is it's installed right here, and you can tell because your finger is where it's going. They were also able to do complex CAD animations. So this is a stack up that has to happen in a specific order. And so there they were able to show that really easily, augmented onto the part itself. They were also able to incorporate IoT logging, so they could incorporate QA into the process. So here's all the different parts, and it says check that they were installed correctly, tap anything that was wrong, and when they go through and they tap it, they can say what the error was, and it gets logged with the part ID listed, the CAD model ID listed. So if there's an issue with our supplier messed up and they're giving us the wrong part, you can know that and have that all logged, and know all the part numbers that are relevant. Or if there's a part that needs to be redesigned, you can have that information really readily available, because I think the average person installing this doesn't know that this part is 22A and this part is 37B. They probably don't know the part names as well if they're installing 1,000 of these, but they can know that, hey, tap, this one's wrong. What part number is that? Oh, okay, great. And so they're able to have that all logged. And then they were able to incorporate all their logging, taking it from a paper work instruction logging to an IoT, part of the same AR experience, log it here, and it gets saved to ThingWorks. So they could then log things, and then it gets saved, and it's sending them, go back. They can save it and have it be saved to ThingWorks in these different UIs, different screens there. And they can export that whenever they need. They can sort it by work order number, by step, by use case. They can see all the different results. If somebody left a note, it would show up here. They'd be able to view that right away. They could have those notes show up for the next user as they're using the procedure. So on step 3, we don't do this anymore. We're going to update the instructions later, but for now, do whatever. That can be showed up in the work instruction itself. They don't have to go back and change it on the fly or republish a new procedure. They can just say, any notes left from previous workers? Yes, here they are, and have that show up. And the result was $1.75 million in value saved, 40% reduction in error, 60% faster onboarding. But the thing they said that was most impactful was just the employee confidence of being able to do it, not needing to ask questions. And they did an A/B test where they had a brand new hire race an experienced worker, and the brand new hire was using Vuforia Studio, and the experienced worker was using their traditional paperwork instructions. And the brand new hire performed the task faster than the experienced person. And the only question the brand new hire had was like, how do I use this tool? And it was a tool that is really simple, that if they had worked there for more than 2 days, they would have known. And so just the impact of knowing exactly where something goes, not needing to kind of compare your notes, not needing to double check the orientation, just being able to place it where the CAD shows it goes was really impactful. And they said that just improved happiness on the floor as well. So that is the content I wanted to cover. This was sort of the review of Expert Capture and Studio. Both really great AR products, they both excel, I think, at different use cases. I'll start with Studio just because we covered that today. Allows you to do complex CAD animations. It is available to be installed on-prem, so if you have ITAR restrictions, you can show that, or you can use it still. Being able to show IoT content and having it go both ways, you can both log to your IoT system as well as show IoT data, turn lights on and off, turn things on and off, and get real-time feedback of I took this bolt to the correct value, yes, and here it's logged. And then sort of underrated is the ability to show CAD with multiple targets. So putting it on a table, locking it onto the model itself, scanning a room you don't have the CAD for. All of those are really useful with Vuforia Studio, where it really excels. Expert Capture is quicker to capture. So if you need a CAD animation, you have to make that animation. Whereas if you're just showing a video of how to turn this lever, Expert Capture is really quick about creating that content. If you need it to be augmented on, make sure this is installed correctly, kind of a QA option for a completed project and don't need animations. Expert Capture is really quick about doing that. And then also has the ability to do AI-driven QA step checks. I'm hoping that something like that comes to Studio at some point, but for right now, it's only available in Expert Capture. So that is the procedure, or that is the webinar. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. Now I don't see any in there at this point. The next AR webinar we have, it's not on the schedule yet, but we were just talking, and it's going to be about how to use AR, augmented reality, without having CAD. And so that's going to cover using PTC's new Expert Capture iOS-based mobile capture, which allows you to capture location data just by scanning it with an iPad. Using LiDAR scans to create area targets like you see here, placing IoT data just in 3D space without CAD, and then being able to use Step Check, the AI feature of Expert Capture, without needing CAD models. All right, so I'm seeing, can I reuse the data from Process Plan PLM? So I'm not sure about Process Plan, but PLM's like a wind chill process. If you have your CAD data there, you can you can bring that in. You can connect that. It'd be connecting through ThingWorx to Vuforia Studio and having it show up there. You could have it grab the latest version from there and then show your CAD model on the table as needed. Okay, the next question: how can it apply in a low volume and high mix environment? Maybe I'm not quite sure. Sebastian, I might reach out to you and just maybe talk specifics about that. I'll do my best to answer right now though while we're on it. So if my understanding of a low volume and high mix, so like not that many, you're not making that many parts and there's a lot of configuration of parts, is what I'm gonna assume that means. So yeah, if you're in a situation where you have few parts that you're producing and there's a lot of configuration, yeah, I think that still applies with Vuforia Studio. You can make a single AR experience and then swap out the CAD. So for example, I'm trying to think if I have, well, let me go back to one of our earlier slides. Well, okay, this is maybe a good example. So if you have a work instructions where it's, how do I install this this wheel, but you have 5 different configurations of how that wheel could install, you could have something like this where the user just selects what configuration it's doing, and then that shows them different configurations of how they could install it. And so you would just make one experience, but then you can grab the CAD, the animation from one specific configuration. And so it's fairly simple to reuse experiences and sort of duplicate all the work you've done and make it into another AR experience. So trying to, like something like this, I would often just duplicate the process and then share it out again and publish it again. So like these two examples here, it's the same procedure, just duplicated so that one is an assembly process, one is a service process, changing out just the animation you're doing. But if that doesn't answer, we can talk as well after this call. Well, thank you. That's all that I had for you all today. Thank you all for attending. And I will reach out to you if you have any questions, or reach out to me if you have any questions, and I will we'll send you the recording. All right. Have a good rest of your day.